it's good. Yeah, OBS is kind of good. Let me show you the whole OBS screen. It's kind of cool, and I want to show you some of the statistics that it also collects. So you can see when you have OBS turned on, which stands for Open Broadcasting System, it shows you what is the bit rate at this point. So this is the actual bit rate between my computer and the YouTube server. It also shows you, the actual frame rate and also how much processing power it is consuming. So it's only using about 6.2% of whatever processor I have here. With my older computers, it can consume like about 20%. So depending on how powerful your processor is or how energy efficient it is, that number can change quite a bit. This is used by a lot of gamers to kind of record their games, but I can also see how it can be useful, especially in a class like this, where the software you have to use is completely GUI driven. So it's not like you can show me the source code. There's no text file to send me when you want me to look at something, especially if it is a user interface issue. So with this software, which is free, you can record your own stuff and then push it onto YouTube as unlisted. Then you can send me the link to the video and go like, okay, this is what I was trying to do, and if I couldn't get it done, and can you tell me, what I should have done differently? So that's a really useful tool, for that purpose too. So are you guys getting the idea how you might be able to use this, in this class? Yes? Huh? Oh, it's OBS Studio for free. So let me hide this first. I'm not gonna close it. So with this one, you just go to OBS Studio, and the first link is the correct one, OBS project, and you can download it for all 3 different platforms. So it's not like you have to use Linux. You can install it in Windows, Mac OS 10, and even if you do not have administrative access to a computer, I found that you can get a portable version, and you can just put it onto your thumb drive, and then you will still be able to do it. So you can do something like this even on a library computer where you're not allowed to install any additional software. So I personally find it quite useful, especially since it's free. I mean, what is the worst thing that can happen? I mean, you just wasted some time, try to get it to work, doesn't work, or doesn't work the way you want it to work. You can always just kind of uninstall it.
Now you say it's for video recording and live streaming. So does it work like a camera or?
No. So it's a program, so it doesn't really do the hardware thing. But if you want to, you can actually hook it up to the camera on a computer and put it at the corner of a screen so that people can look at your screen and also you at the same time. You can input as many sources as you want and overlay them in different ways. Okay, and you had a question, sir?
Yeah, so you were just saying that that we can record like at the MIT website or something and put it on YouTube and send you the link.
Yeah, you're just doing a screen recording of your entire screen. With your voice, possibly included in it. So you're just recording how you get certain things done. So if you cannot get it done, like you keep getting an error message or the blocks just won't click. So instead of describing that in words, which is really difficult, you can just kind of show me this is what I was trying to do, and it just won't click. Can you tell me why they're not clicking?
What file format is it saved in?
There are choices. Let me go back to OBS here. So when you choose start recording, it will save it to a file. I think the default is Flash, FLV, but it also can record into different file formats as well. It's small for the quality you get, so it's actually not a bad recording format. But I believe you have choices too. You can go to settings. And then you go to, you may not be able to see the entire screen because it's taller than, resize it.
Is this for your PC or is this for this program?
It's only for this program.
Okay, so
Yeah, so when you go to either video or output, okay, I need to put on this to see it. So you can control your bit rate. So if you don't want it to take up too much space on your hard drive, you can decrease the bit rate. And then the recording here. So right here is recording quality, and also this is a recording format. So it looks like you have choices, but since it's grayed out for some reason, I think it's because I'm already in streaming mode, so it doesn't let me change it. But it looks like you got options of how you want to save your recorded file.
Can you go up to output mode?
This is output and mode. Yeah, I can't change a single thing right now. I think it's locked out because I'm already streaming. So if I'm not streaming, you probably would be able to kind of click on the drop-down box and see what options you have. The website itself, okay, the OBS Studio website is actually quite useful as well. They have a lot of help. If you go to either help or forum, a lot of issues are already discussed, and people can tell you what the solutions are. But if you just do a Google search on specific things, like how do I overlay my own camera on the laptop computer on top of the whatever desktop you're recording, people will tell you that. So it's really quite flexible. I mean, you can do a lot with it. I do not use any because my computer comes with a camera on it already. Yeah, most laptop computers do now. So if you don't want a camera built into the computer, you actually have to special order those computers, because most come with a camera that faces the user. Yep, which is kind of creepy because if somebody can hack your computer and remotely turn on the camera without you knowing it, that can be interesting. Disturbing. Yeah, exactly. They certainly can. I mean, the possibility is there. It's just a matter of, is it easy to do that? So keep that in mind. Okay, so that's the OBS stuff. So we are now getting back to class stuff for cisp362. So the first thing I want to go over, this is just really a checkpoint for myself, so I know what to go over. Is not officially an assignment yet because you still have an outstanding homework assignment at this point. But on Wednesday, I will give you an assignment that has to do with you thinking about a semester project. So this will be turned in on the last day of instruction for this entire semester. So you got time to do it. So I want you to describe, what that project is going to be about, what app you want to write, okay, for the rest of this semester, and what kind of features, why you want to write it, what it's for, that sort of thing. In previous years, I always try to get people to use the UML, the Unified Modeling Language, and then use case diagrams and stuff like that. But this year, I'm going to take a break. So it's just going to be a text description. If you want to include some graphics, like, so the screen is going to look like this, and this is where they push the button, and this is what it does, and so on. Feel free to include pictures, but I just need to know a general description. Then I can reply back, and give you some feedback, like, okay, this may be way too ambitious. Okay, you might want to scale back a little bit to something simpler. Okay, or I might say, oh, this looks way too simple, because somebody may say, oh, I'll just make a Costco, counter thing. Well, we just did it on day one of this class, okay? So I'll give you some feedback about, what you can do, what you can consider, what options or what features in App Inventor can be useful. It's going to be helpful for me as well, because instead of just me going through a gazillion, different features in the App Inventor, I can look at that list of projects that you guys want to do and focus on those things. The features, the components that you need to use. So that's going to be helpful. It's going to be an assignment on Wednesday, which means it's going to do next Wednesday. So you got some time to think about it. It's not set in stone either. Okay, you can change it as the semester progresses. But I need to get a general idea of what you guys want to do. Is that okay? Because I'm assuming, since this class only gets you a certificate, it doesn't actually, help you with a degree in any way. So you're in this class because you're interested in app development. So I'm thinking that you might have an idea or two already in your mind that I really want to do this. I just need to learn how to do it. Okay, so that's that. So the next thing, what I want to go over today, we'll see whether we can get through all of these topics. I think we can. So the first thing is I want to go through some string and string-related operations in App Inventor. If you know a scripting programming language, it doesn't even matter which one, like PHP, JavaScript, Visual Basic, C#, and so on, most of those scripting languages have plenty of string-related operations already. So you might be familiar with most of these already. I'm just going to go through the catalog to give you an idea of what is available in App Inventor. So that's one. The next topic is a control structure topic. Last time we talked about conditional statements, and this time we're going to talk about loops or iterations. How do you keep doing the same thing over and over again? So there are three main kinds. They're not difficult to understand. If you're not taking cisp362 in this semester, as a co-requisite, and you have some programming backgrounds already, we can pretty much get through that quickly. On the other hand, if anyone in class is taking cisp362 right now, I can explain those concepts in more details. P300, that's kind of like the first programming class that people have to take before C and C++ to explain the concepts, to explain mostly like what is a loop, what is a conditional statement, that sort of stuff. Okay. And then we'll get to notifier. I might actually talk about notifier before loops, okay, because I want to give you guys a mechanism by which you can have outputs from your application. A label works, okay, but it doesn't give you the ability to click on it and go like acknowledged, okay, move on to the next one and so on. Notifiers, it does many things. One of the things, so you can see, it can do a simple notification dialog box. So it just pops up on screen, and you click OK when you're done reading the message. It can ask for user decisions like OK, cancel, or yes, no, or cancel, or something like that. Okay, so you can have choices provided to the end user, and it can also disappear, which basically means it appears out of nowhere as a text on the screen, but then it dissolves, okay, after a fixed amount of time. So do we have any questions about the main topics that we'll be going over today? Is that all good so far? Okay, all right. Okay, so we're going to go get started here. And I don't even bother to, it's just App Inventor. I don't even bother to bookmark it because it's easy to search, on Google search. And as before, I just use create apps. And I'll keep using my school account, for this purpose. All right, well, any project will do, because the first thing I want to do is simply to show you what kind of string functions are available. So string functions, are basically under text. I guess, string is kind of a specialized term in programming, and most people do not know what a string is, when they're not programmers, and that's why they call it text. But text is basically string, the same thing. All right, so we'll just kind of briefly go over some of these blocks. The first one is what you need to create a literal string. Okay, you can see the double quotes, which you do not type. Okay, so whatever when you drag this block, you can put a cursor inside the little box inside. Then you can basically type whatever you want, and it's called a literal string because that's what it is. Okay, you cannot use a variable inside it and expect a variable value to be reflected inside a string. Well, then what do I do if I want to say counter has a value of, and then the actual numerical value? You use the next one. It's a join operation, but it's not really it's not a join operation as it is a join operation in some scripting languages. Join is more like concatenation. That's basically what it is. It's concatenation, which means you are just appending a string after another one, after another one, after another one. Okay, So the minimum you need would be 2 things, okay? Which kind of makes sense. I mean, if you only have 1 string, why are you joining, right? So you can join 2 strings at a minimum, but if you want to join more, it's easy. You drag this block out, and then you click on the little gearbox thing, and then you can drag additional slots. So you can basically drag as many slots as you need, and you can concatenate many strings together, which is useful because in some scripting languages, concatenation can only take 2 parameters, which means if you have 6 strings to concatenate, you need to nest the concatenations, which is doable. I mean, that's actually it's a very elegant way to do things, but at the same time, when you look at the code, it looks kind of ugly. This is something that's pretty easy to do. The third one is called length. All it does is to tell you how many characters is in the string. So it returns a number, but it takes a string, to fill this slot here. Are we good so far? Okay, so basic stuff. This one is a shorthand because you can always say, okay, what is the length of a string? If it is a 0, then the string is empty, okay? But it just gives you, the extra block here to say, well, is the string empty? Okay, it saves you some time and saves some blocks, but it does the same thing as getting the length first and then comparing to 0. Are we good so far? Okay, all right. The next one is compare. We talked about this and we actually used it in the previous class. So if you want to compare for greater than or equal to, it's the same block. It's just that after you drag the block out, you use the drop-down box and change that comparison operator to whatever you need. Okay. The next one is trim. What trim does is it gets rid of the leading and the ending white spaces. So in case you think that some end users might type extra spaces after or extra spaces before, trim will get rid of those. And for every single one of these, if you hover over that, it does give you a very short description. So this one returns a copy with any leading or trailing spaces removed. Yep.
Trim. So if I have 2 words, I have to do each one of them separate, or as it will combine the 2 words as 1 word under trim, right?
It depends on where those 2 words are coming from. If those 2 words are coming from a single literal string here, then the spaces in between the words will not be touched by trim. It will only remove the leading spaces of the string and the trailing spaces of the string. Whatever you pass to it, because it only takes 1 argument. So are we good with all of these functions? Okay. The next one is uppercase or lowercase. Okay, so you can see the drop-down box here. All it does is to convert an entire string to either uppercase or the entire string to lowercase. Can come in handy if there are certain things that you want to process and you want to make it case insensitive. Okay, but if you want to do something that's case sensitive, you don't want to convert those into upper or lowercase. Okay, moving on. Starts at text and then and it's looking for something. Okay, so let me move the mouse pointer a little bit here. So this one returns the starting index of the piece in the text, which in C and C++ is known as stir or string. It's finding a string in a string. It's finding a substring in a string. Okay, so if you're looking for, so let's say the first one is A, B, C, D, E, F, and then the next one is BC, then it will return an index indicating where BC is. Now, the only thing you have to really remember when you're really used to other type of programming languages is when we talk about strings, App Inventor has a starting point of 1 instead of 0. So the position of the first character is 1 instead of 0. It uses 0 to basically reflect that it is not found. So that's a big change compared to C and C++. This one tests whether, so the other one returns the index. This one just tells you whether it's there or not. So once again, the second one, the one I'm pointing at right now, is kind of a shorthand of the other one, because you can always do the other one, the one right before, and then compare that to 0. Okay, if it does not equal to 0, that means it's there. If it does equal to 0, it means it's not there. This one is just returning a Boolean right away to save you the trouble of having to compare that. Is that okay? All right. So the next one is split. And there's a drop-down box here. So split you can specify different kind of splits. So what split does is you give it a string, and typically it's comma separated or something like that, and it will break it up into multiple items. So it divides text into pieces using the text at as the dividing points and produce a list of the results. So don't worry about it. We will get to lists. Okay, we'll talk about what a list is and how to make use of it. Just as a preview, okay, list is going to be a really, really useful idea for the rest of this semester. Okay, because a list, for those of you who know a more traditional programming language, it's kind of like an array. Okay, this is how you can combine different things into one single thing. But it is not just an array, because an array has a very strict requirement. Every item in an array, they have to have the same type. So they can all be numbers, they can all be names, they can all be booleans, but you cannot have a mixture and go like, this is a string, this is a number, and by the way, this one is another list. An item of a list can be another list using this particular scheme. Yeah. And on top, when you have a list of what we call key value pairs, it is equivalent, quote unquote, equivalent to objects in many other programming languages, because you can look up a property by the name of the property. It's called a key value pair, or a list of key value pairs. So we'll talk about all of those in another lecture. Okay, so this class, we're just going to focus on some more basic stuff, but that's how a split is going to give you. Okay, a split will give you a list of items, but it's not nested, so it doesn't give you quite the same thing as the other one. Okay, so let's go back. Next one is split at spaces. It's just basically a shorthand of the previous one, because the previous one always asks you, what character should I use to separate items on the list? You always have to say it, a comma, semicolon, or something, right, or a space. This one just says, I'm going to assume that you want to use a space to separate the items. So it's a shorthand of the one before. You can see App Inventor has a lot of shorthand blocks, which basically makes people to kind of get into programming a little bit easier. Segment extracts the segment of the given length from the given text, starting from the given position. There's a lot of givens, right? Position 1 denotes the beginning of the text. So once again, 1 specifies the first character. In the very traditional BASIC, this is known as the mid function. Okay, I believe most programming languages have something like this. It basically just allows you to extract a smaller string from a longer string. Okay, where do I start extracting, and how long is the smaller string supposed to be when I extract it from the longer string? Can be very useful, but it's quite tedious to make use of it. The next one is replace. So it is a replacement of all text. It returns a new text obtained by replacing all occurrences of the segment with the replacement. So this is the original text. This is where you specify the original text. This is where you specify what to find, and then this is where you specify what to replace the found stuff with. Is that okay? So basically, search and replace. In what text are we performing this? What are we searching for? What are we replacing that with? It is not aware of regular expression, in case some of you are wondering. So it doesn't deal with regular expression. It's a fairly simple-minded kind of search and replace. Are we good with that? Okay. All right. So we're close to the end here. Confuscate text. There's a longer text here. Produces text like a text block. The difference is the text is not easily discoverable by examining the app's APK. Use this when creating apps to distribute that includes confidential information. For example, API stands for Application Programming Interface or Application Program Interface Keys. Warning, this produces only very low security against expert adversaries. I would read it as, don't count on it. And then the next one is a string. And then you give it a thing, and it will tell you either Boolean, true, it is in fact a string, or it is not a string. So there are many things that are not strings, like a list is not a string. So if you give it a list here, it will say, nope, this is not a string. But numbers are kind of special because numbers can be seen as a string. It can also be seen as a number. So if you plug a number here, it might actually say it is a string. Okay, and that's it. Those are all the basic string functions. Other than the ones that will return a list type, I'm hoping that most of you are kind of familiar with the rest. You kind of know what it does, and you can design some experiments to work with it. Are we good so far? Okay, good. All right. So getting back to the list of items to go through today. And by the way, the reason why you see the page kind of reloading is because of my little Chrome extension. I think it's this one here. Nope. Silence of the tabs. So what it does, okay, so the reason why I need this is because when I teach this class and start a new browser, you only get like 4 or 5 tabs here. But when I'm home and I'm researching stuff, what I need to teach and stuff like that, it would not be uncommon that I have like 20, 30 tabs open at any particular time. And every single one chews up a little bit of memory. And before you know it, the browser takes up the bulk of the memory available on my computer. So by using the silence of the tab, which is one of the many Chrome extensions that can do this, is it can quote-unquote suspend a tab. When it suspends a tab, it also frees the memory associated with that tab. So this way, I don't have every single tab being active and consume all the memory of my computer. So it's an easier way for me to manage how I use memory on my computer. You just go to the Chrome store. You just look it up like Chrome silence of the yep. It doesn't work like 100%. You can tell that it can reduce the memory use, but it's not like closing the entire browser. But it's helpful. And since we're on this topic, the other thing that you might want to consider if you use Chrome or other browsers, if you open a lot of tabs, the other one that might be useful is called Session Buddy. Session Buddy allows you to, it automatically save all the tabs of a particular session with a generic name. But if you say, okay, these are all the tabs that I want for cisp362, you can save those tabs with a particular name. Then you can retrieve and pop all of those tabs back up the next time you start a browser. So combined with multiple profiles in Google Chrome, you can really manage, and focus on just what you're doing. So this way you don't have, Amazon online shopping on one tab, your online banking on another tab, homework on some other tab, and then your instant messaging with somebody, your buddies on another tab. So you get confused, not confused so much as you get distracted, by all those other tabs. This way you can just have one single Chrome instance for homework, right? Another one for communication with all your friends, another one for online shopping, and so on. Okay? So, just little tools that I found useful over time. All right, so we are now done with the first one and the second one. So now we can start with loops. Okay. And as I said, I might change the order. So I'm going to go talk about notifiers first. And the way I'm going to talk about it is to start a new app, and that's all it's going to do, is to do some notifier stuff. And you can see it's suspended this one, but this one is the one that I want. So I go back to projects and start a new project, and I'm going to say this one is test notifier, and it's going to have only one button. So I drag and drop a button here, and I will change the text on the button to say test this. Okay, so it's really just a trigger to start an action. Okay, nothing else. But I will also need a notifier object or component. So you can see notifier is a part of user interface. So you drag a notifier into the viewer, but it doesn't show anywhere, because by itself, it doesn't show on the screen of an app. It is still a user interface component, but until you say, hey, I want you to do something, it's not showing on the screen at all. Okay. Instead, it is being shown here. Underneath, you can see that it is now listed as a non-visible component. It's not hidden, it is just non-visible. So until you need to use it, it remains out of sight, but it is available. Is that okay? Does everybody understand? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had a random thought. It had nothing to do with that. I was just going to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
It'd be kind of cool to look at some of the apps other people have created to see how advanced this MIT thing can get.
You can go to the App Inventor gallery.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I didn't know if you had like some favorites or something. I don't know why.
Sure. Yeah, you can go there and search for something. If you find one that you think is really interesting, I can talk about it in class, especially if you're only interested in how did they get this done. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. What App Inventor can do is actually more than what most people can think about. So I'll only talk about this for those of you who kind of want to know, oh, I'm not really sure whether App Inventor can do this, okay? So I can tell you this one here. If you know how to program in JavaScript, I think some of you may have some exposure to JavaScript. If you have not, you can learn JavaScript on your own, not for this class. I do not require you to know JavaScript for this class. But there is a way to incorporate JavaScript into App Inventor. It's a very obscure way. So you can have your main App Inventor code to pass information to process in JavaScript that is hidden inside a web component, and they can pass the result back to you. But the key is you can only pass something into process as a string, and it can only reply back as a string. So you cannot pass objects around, okay? Is that okay? But since we're talking about JavaScript, okay, now once again, this is not something that I need everybody to understand. I just want those of you who are thinking about doing something like this to kind of know that it's doable, okay? So with JavaScript, there's a standard called JSON, JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's basically a way to encode an object, which is not text or linear, into a string. They can pass it around as text, okay? You can, if you want to, you can even automate App Inventor and send that as text to another, cell phone, okay? And then so with JSON, you can encode object into a string, and then you can decode that string back into an object, okay? And we have similar capability in App Inventor. So we can pack things into a string, we can unpack it back into an object. So what that basically says is you can pass complex objects into a JavaScript program to process it, and then it can return the result back to you as a complex object as well. Is that okay? So that means that if you want to implement SHA-2 hash function, you don't want to do it in app inventor blocks, because that way your blocks will be so huge it's not easy to do. So what you do is you download a JavaScript function that's already doing it, put it inside the web component, and then you just program the interface so you can pass something from outside in and say, okay, when you're done with the hash2, give me the result. So we can do something like that, okay? It's actually more capable than most people think it is. It's just that you have to look for ways to make it happen. Okay, so getting back to this. So now I'm going to start programming. This is an app that doesn't really seem like they can do much, right? I mean, there's only one button and one something called notifier, as a component. It's not visible. So when we switch to blocks, okay, not surprisingly, the button has the usual stuff, okay? So a button has, when button is clicked, do something. So we can just pull that out here. And in fact, this time I'm going to pull out the other one too, which is long click. So long click here. All right, so because I want to be able to do two different things depending on, which one, how I clicked it. And the nice thing about graphical programming is you can put things side by side. So there's no such thing as actually ordering, okay? All right, so the first thing I want to do is, the next thing I want to do is look at a notifier and ignore the event handler first, okay? So I want to explain the purple blocks. The purple blocks, they all start with call, okay? You can see, every single one of these purple blocks starts with call, okay? So the way it works is these things trigger certain types of operation that are specific to this notifier. Okay, it's called notifier 1. So the first one is to dismiss a progress dialog. Basically, it makes it go away. So that means a dialog. Progress dialog is one of the features of the notifier component. You can log an error. Okay, it will report and log an error, log information, log warning, and to understand, how each one or what each one does, you can just put a hover. You just hover over the block, and it explains it. Okay. So this one, it doesn't actually do anything. It logs it into the Android log, which is kind of interesting and useful, but not so much in this class. Okay. If you want to debug a program in App Inventor, it's really kind of difficult because it doesn't have breakpoints. You cannot say, oh, when you get to this block, I want you to stop so I can look at the value of the variables and so on. It doesn't do that, okay? But you can potentially use this feature to log it into the log file on the Android device, including the emulator. Then you go like, well, that's not going to do me any good because I can't see the log messages. Normally, you cannot. But with ADB on the command line interface, you can actually have it to basically, you can run ADB on a command line interface and just say, okay, whenever there's a log message, display that. So you can have a command line interface on the side of App Inventor, or on App Inventor next to it, and actually what those messages scroll through. So that's an interesting way to debug when you don't have when you cannot set up breakpoints and other features like in a normal debugger. It really helps. All right. Yep. Go ahead.
Is there a place to easily show how to do that?
If you search for ADB and log, you probably will find the instruction to do it. Okay. Yep. ADB is the command that allows your PC to communicate with an Android device that's already communicating with it. So ADB is really flexible. You can run a shell on the Android using ADB. But you can also install software, uninstall software, look at the log. You can do a lot of operations remotely using ADB. And the other thing that's good about ADB is because it's a command line program, you can script it. So if you have something that takes 7 steps, utilizing ADB, you can put it into a batch file in Windows. So every time you run that batch file, it will basically run all of those ADB commands, so you don't have to remember, what each one looks like, the syntax and stuff like that. Yes?
ADB?
ADB.
Is that a programming language
No, it's a utility program. Okay, so I can open a new tab here. You can see how I just keep opening new tabs. So if you look up ADB, okay, since I was talking about logs, okay, so it's called logcat. Okay, in this using ADB. So it's basically ADB logcat and then something. Logcat stands for logcat. Okay, that's not very helpful. Cat is a Linux command that shows the content of a file. Okay, so look at it as type in DOS. Okay, so logcat is basically show log. Okay, it can show you the log. It can have a bunch of features, but the simplest way to do it is simply to type ADB logcat on a terminal. Do you guys want me to kind of show you how to get this done? Yeah, go ahead.
I was saying, or you can put it in a module or something.
Yeah, well, you can.
It might be useful.
There are a lot of ADB functions that are really helpful. So the best way is really just to go to this page or the parent page here, because logcat is just one of many different things you can do with ADB. And ADB, by the way, is not Android Debug. It stands for Android Debugger Bridge, I think. But the B is not bug, it's bridge. Or maybe Android Development Bridge or something like that. It allows you to remote control an Android device that's either hooked up by Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. Yeah, or in the case of an emulator, you can do that with an emulator. But it's the same command. So, oops, wrong window. Get back to here. Okay, so this one, show alert, actually shows a temporary message, and then it goes away. This one is the really cool one that gives you all kinds of flexibility. It displays a dialog box with two buttons, and the user can choose which one, and it has a cancel button too, or optionally has a cancel button. So there are up to 3 buttons on the screen. If a user presses on one particular button, it will raise another event. So when you want to process what button the user has clicked, you have to use the event handler for after choosing. Okay, I will show you guys how to do this. But this gives you a lot of flexibility because you can decide what appears on the top of the dialog box, what is inside the message of the dialog box, what each button says, and whether it has a cancel associated with it. So that's really kind of flexible. And it has a show message dialog, which is a simplified version of this. It only has one single button. So it doesn't give people a choice. It is just saying, hey, this is a message. I want you to see it. And then you can click to acknowledge, but you cannot really make a choice in that case. Show progress dialog. So according to this, it shows you a dialog box with title and message, but it also contains a spinning artifact to indicate something is working. It doesn't show you a bar to indicate how much is done, but it just shows you a spinning wheel that shows that something is working. So this way, if you have a long operation to perform in your app, instead of just making your app not respond because it's busy doing something, put this up first so that people know that, yes, I am working, I'm doing something, don't worry. And then this one is show text dialog. This one basically is cancelable. It allows you to show a general message. Okay, so you can see how. This one. Okay, excuse me, I take it back. This one allows the end user to type something, and after the end user types something, it will raise another event called after text input of the same component, so they can catch what the user has typed. So this is where you can, really ask people to type in something, not as a text box on the screen, but as a dialog box. So there's no skipping over it. You have to type something and then press the enter key. Is that okay? All right. So the rest are not calls. Okay, the rest are properties you can set or just get the property back. So are we good so far with the notifier object? Well, let's try to have some fun with it. Okay. All right. So which one do you want to try first? I will let you guys choose. You can even try log first. Even though it's the most complex one to demonstrate, but we can do it.
I like the last call.
The last one?
Show text dialog.
Okay.
Title, cancel.
All right, so we'll try that. So we take a block out here, and then we stash it here. And then we just have to specify a message to show and a title, and whether it is cancelable or not. Okay. So let's make it not cancelable. Okay, so turn this into false. And then we specify some, at this point I don't really, because we want to build this program, gradually. So I'm not going to do something too complex the first time. This is the one that asks for text input.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, it does. So we'll go ahead and change the, yep. So, okay, I need to put this on. So I'm going to change the text here and say, pay attention, type something, there's no escape. Okay, so that's what the program is going to say. Okay. All right, so I'm going to run this in an emulator. So the way I do it in Linux is not going to be the same thing that you do in Windows. In Windows, you don't have to do a single thing unless you're using my special zip file. So the portable version of the emulator, you do have to kind of run it. You have to start that thing from the zipped folder or the unzipped folder. But in Linux, you have to start this manually, which is not too bad. And there we go. And then we can now say, oops, nope, we're not ending a screen. Oh, you have to get back to, oh, never mind. There are two levels of scroll bar. I just missed the outer one. So we go start an emulator. So depending on your PC, if you want to use an emulator, if you have a relatively fast PC, like this is actually pretty fast for a laptop. It can show up like at this speed. The Android device actually runs faster than the hardware version in emulation using this particular setup. But if you have an older PC, it might take a little bit longer. So just kind of keep in mind that how much time it takes depends a lot on your hardware. Yep.
So if you are writing an app
Uh-huh.
and you have like the it's on the other screen where you can on Designer, what is it called?
Viewer.
No, connectivity.
Okay.
Connect to other things,
Uh-huh.
including other apps. You said, right?
Yeah.
On the emulator, it doesn't come with any apps, right? Can you install apps
Yes.
on the emulator?
So you use ADB, you can use ADB to install APK files. So as long as you can get the APK files, you'll be able to install it. And there are a few ways to get the APK files, because when you go to the Play Store on the real phone, it doesn't give you an option to save the APK file, but the APK file is actually saved in the system. Now, offhand, I cannot remember the path of where the APK files are saved, but I know they're saved. So using a file manager program on an Android device, I think you should be able to navigate to the APK file, extract that file, put it back to the PC so you can install it in the emulator.
You would need an Android device then.
Yes, unless the Play Store has a way to save an APK file. I'm not sure whether that can be done or not. Yeah. All right, so now we got this app up and running. You can see when I click it, it has this dialog box. The title is where at the top of the screen, and then the message is really just explaining in detail what needs to be done. And since I did not use a cancel button, it only has an OK button here, and then I can type whatever I want here. Okay, so let me just type whatever I want here. Okay, I need to click here, and it opens up. Oh, okay, this is kind of lame. It doesn't let me type on my PC keyboard. Huh? It does on yours. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, I can't type on mine. Okay.
If there were cell phones in the 1980s, I'd say that emulator looks like it's from the 1980s.
Now, in 1980s, you have Palm Pilots. Yeah.
Really?
The Palm Pilot was still around in about 2000.
The only thing I had to get in the 80s was big white phones.
Oh, this allows you to enter multiple lines too. All right. Yeah. So I just click OK, and then nothing happens. Okay, because I didn't set up anything to intercept the text that I have just typed. So now the question is, where is that text that I just typed? Where is that going? Okay. Another thing I want to show you, which is really important in both user interface design, game programming, and a few other types of programming paradigms, okay, it's kind of important. So I'm going to put a block here. I'll put a block right after this call. And for simplicity, all I'm going to do is to change the color of the screen. So I go to the screen properties and scroll down to background color. So I'm going to change the background color of the screen itself to something else. And then if you want to specify color, there are several ways to do it. The easiest way is just to go to colors and then just pick one. Or if you prefer to mix one, you can also use makecolor. And what makecolor is going to do is to allow you to specify the RGB of the color that you want to create. Okay, so yeah.
I liked how once you drag one of the colors out, you can click it and it has more color specifications too. You could have like a dark red instead of just the red it shows.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I did the homework though.
Yeah.
You can, so with makecolor, you can even parameterize these. So you can use variables instead of constants. Yeah, so you can have a very kind of psychedelic, experience by morphing the background color slowly, across the rainbow, spectrum. Now, you can do it. I mean, you just kind of have to know how to use a timer, and use a timer so that you can use a timer to trigger an event. So every 5 seconds or so, you make a very small, subtle change to the background color. So I'm just going to do something, simple here. You can also split color, by the way. So you can split a color back to its ingredients, the 3 RGB values. So that way you can, you don't need a separate variable to keep track of the color of the screen. You just read it back, make some changes to it, and then put it back in. So there are many ways to do it.
So that helps with the morphing thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the morphing thing is not, it's still going to be complex because you have to know how to tweak the 3 values because it's an RGB format. It is not based on, not CYMK, huh?
So it kind of moves through that range, but not outside of it.
Well, like if you want to morph between blue and green, you have to include more yellow, but keeping the blue. So I guess if you keep one constant and move, keep 2 constant and move only one of them, that will kind of make it change subtly. Yep. So that part is not, it may take some time to work out. Yep. But it does have that capability.
When
Yeah.
you create a color,
Uh-huh.
is it used, does it stay where you can use it for other screens?
Yes. Well, I mean, you can mix it, right? You can mix color any way you want.
Right, but I mean, are you able to save that value so if you want to inquire about it, use it again?
You can use it again. You can put it into a variable, then you can just refer to the global variable.
Okay.
Yeah. But the color is not a type that you can save. I don't think you have a global variable as a color, but you can save the RGB value and then you can mix the color back again.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And I'm going to set another block here. So I'm going to duplicate this block and have one right before and one right after. So you click on this, and then we use the normal background color here. Okay. So according to this code, what it does is when I click on the button, the first thing is it will set the background color back to white, okay, the usual color, and then it will call show text dialog box, and then it will set the background color to something that's yucky, okay? But the question is, what are you going to see? There are two alternatives. One is until you type enter, until you type accept on the text dialog box, then the background screen is going to change. The second option is the moment the text dialog box shows up, the background changes. Are you guys understanding what those two options are? The two alternatives? Now, of course, the system is only going to do it in one way. Okay, so we'll play this out, okay, and see which way it's going to happen. So we switch back to here. We click this. So you can see it is almost as if the background color changed first before the dialog box became completely shown. So what is that telling you? It tells you that you cannot use the same event handler to process the text. Because as far as the event handler is concerned, we're done with this block now, even though I still have not entered anything for the text.
So what color is it showing? Because it looks different than the one that says 2.
Correct, because it's in the background, so that's why it's darker.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So I've just been trying to figure out how do you restart the program for if you want to keep testing something. I couldn't find an easy way to do it except.
Now with this program, there's okay. I understand your concern, but I'll make 2 points. Okay. So the first point is with this program, it doesn't really matter because I don't have any initialization. I don't have any global variables, and I don't have anything associated with the screen's initialize method. So that means I don't need to re-trigger that action over and over again, because what I do is I'm making changes to the click button, the click event of the button, and it's okay. So as far as this program is concerned, it doesn't need to be restarted. But to answer your question, how do you get a program to restart and have a connection back? That's maybe difficult. I have not really tested that with the emulator. So if you're writing a program where you need to restart it to test because you have something in the initialize event of a screen, or if you have multiple screens, it falls into the same category. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say also just, I don't know, for me, when I'm testing something,
Mm-hmm.
it is nice to know that I'm starting from scratch as opposed to
Okay.
I keep building and building, and I think I'm starting from a certain point, and then, you know what I mean? And this part, there's no easy way. I was just disconnecting and reconnecting it.
Okay.
I couldn't figure out another way.
I can show you how to do it. All right, so I'm gonna click this, and so I'll try the first way first. Okay, I don't think it's gonna work, but I'll give it a try. Well, the nice thing about programming classes is it's not okay. So I'll close this first and then restart the app manually, and then so this is still good. So at this point, this is up, but App Inventor is not talking to it yet because I haven't done any changes. So what I need to do is to make a minor change somewhere. It doesn't even have to be at a particular place. let's see. Oh, I can change the caption of screen 1. So instead of reading screen 1 here, I can change it to read something else. So I'll just say test notifier. Okay. Okay, it doesn't like that because it's counting on the companion to maintain constant communication, and I closed it and reopened it, so it knew and it didn't like it. In that case, if I go to connect, yeah, so it killed the emulator already. Okay, so that didn't work. I was testing that first because if it worked, it would be the easiest way to do it, right? Yep.
When it reopened, it said set legacy connection and it has a checkbox. Would that be when I should reconnect?
No, the set legacy has to do with an older protocol that worked with earlier versions of App Inventor. So I don't think that's going to help us. Okay, so we're going to have to go for the more difficult route. Okay, it's okay. I got it. All right. So the more difficult route involves, getting to the folder where the App Inventor stuff is installed, and then you go to commands for App Inventor. So most of these instructions will work in Windows and Mac OS X as well. You just have to find out where that is installed. So with you, okay, because you're using my custom distribution of the emulator package, so you just have to go to the zip folder or the unzipped folder and go to the subdirectory called commands for App Inventor. Okay, so once you get there, I use ls because this is Linux. In DOS, you type dir. So these are all the commands. So the one that you need to run is run emulator. In Linux, I have to precede the command with /. In DOS, if you're in that folder already, you do not need to type the /. Okay. In fact, you won't need a slash, you need a / in the case of DOS. Or in the case of DOS, run emulator, which is right here, is a batch file. You can just double click it from the file explorer. Okay, so there are several ways to do it in DOS, but in Linux, I'm just used to command line interfaces. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm starting the execution of the emulator by hand. Okay. This is basically what AI Starter would do, but since I can't rely on that, I'm going to do it this way. So you can see it just restarts the emulator, but this time I'm doing it by hand.
The file is called run emulator, is that what it was?
Yeah, yep, it's called run emulator, and I'm not sure whether it picks up the same emulator because I need to find out whether the companion software is, it starts up the same one, so that's good. All right, so don't start this, okay? There's no need to start this. So what you do next is to go back to App Inventor, go to the website. This time, don't use connect. We are not connecting to anything. We're building the APK file. So click on the second option, which will let App Inventor, the website, to build the application into an APK file, which stands for Android package. So the Android package file is going to be downloaded back onto the PC that's running the browser, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so click on this. And how fast this goes depends a lot on the server load. Like if the whole class or if throughout the country many classes are going at the same time, this might take a long time. On the other hand, if nobody's using it, it can go pretty fast.
So, sorry, I just want to make sure you missed
Yeah, go ahead.
So you went, found the folder, then you run emulator, and then you just went back to here and went to build APK file.
Build and download APK file. Yeah, because it has two options. One is to download the APK file. The other one will give you a URL in the form of a QR code. So that way, if you have a real device, you can just scan the QR code and get that file remotely. But I'm doing an emulator, so I don't have the ability to scan the QR code. So it will save the file. Remember where the file is saved? I'm saving in the temp folder. You usually would save it into your downloads folder by default. Okay, so click save. The file is now saved. And this is the emulator, and this is my command line interface. Let me put these side by side. So the next thing I need to do is to run ADB. So once again, this part you do have to run on a command line interface. In Windows, you basically go to the Start button and then go to the little search text box thing, and then you type CMD. Okay, that's how you start a command line interface in Windows. And then you have to navigate to this folder, which takes a little bit of, you have to know which drive is on, and then the subfolder, and navigate to it. But once you get to the ADB command, you type /ADB. And then the first thing I need to do is to just ADB devices. And it will start a server. And this is what you want to see. You want to see under list of devices, it lists emulator -5554, which matches the number on here, 5554. Okay, that's the instance number of that particular emulator. I think it is also the port number corresponding to it. It says offline, but that's okay. Okay, once we run the command, it will connect to it. So the next command is going to be the most important one. It's running ADB, but this time you want to say install. So type up install install, and you want to specify -r or minus lowercase r. In case you are reinstalling a program, the -r is necessary. Without the -r, the install will fail, saying that this app is already installed. But if you specify a -r, you're saying, if it is installed, I want to reinstall. Okay? So whether you have already installed or not, if you specify the -r, it's going to work. And then the next thing is to specify the file itself. Since I saved it into my temp folder, I specify the temp folder. And then the name is test notifier.apk. So this part, it can get a little bit complicated, because if you saved it into your downloads folder by default, then you have to specify C:\users your username downloads and then the name of the APK file. So just keep that in mind, okay? And then you press the enter key, and it's uploading the APK file, and ask Android on the other side to install it. Yes? Go ahead.
It's a lot of steps to try to remember.
Yes?
Do you have
Written down instructions?
yes.
Not yet. I
This
can.
would be cool to
Yep.
have.
Well, that's why I'm recording it, because if it's being recorded, you can actually just watch it step by step, and then you can make your own notes.
True, but the thing is, when you record it, we're only able to look at it while we're in the class.
Yeah.
The next semester, we won't be able to look at the material. Oh, they're on. Okay.
They're on YouTube, so I have never taken down one of my videos, and that's why I have more than 2,500 videos on YouTube now, and most of those are 80 minutes long.
Okay, so the ones that are on YouTube
Uh huh.
that you have,
Yeah.
what are they listed under?
Some Profs. The channel name is Some Profs. SOMEPROFS.
Oh, sorry. My brain works a little slower than
That's
yours
okay.
now. Happens with age, you see.
Yeah. So this is the one thing that you just have to remember, because you can't watch YouTube to find out Some Profs until you know it's Some Profs.
Okay, so some props. And
It's the channel name. So you go to YouTube first and then search for that.
okay.
Yep.
And then I go to your name, or
No, Some Profs. So, okay, let me show you. And in fact, I'm going to show you how to do it using an incognito window. So this way, it is not linked as it's not signed in as me already. So this is what you would see. So you go to Some Profs. Okay, you can type the entire thing on the URL. So you can just type someprofs.com/someprofs. So that would go to my channel right away. And once you get there, the first thing you want to do is not to look into here, but to go to videos. When you click on videos, it will show you the recordings in reversed chronological order. So the most recent ones will be on the top, and then the old one will be at the bottom. So last week, we got this recorded during lecture, and then we got this recorded during the lab remember, I kind of showed you guys how to get the special zip file to work. So this is all recorded already from last week. Yeah, with a GUI program like this, sometimes I think the video recording is actually more helpful, because then I don't have to take screenshots and then point on in the screenshot which button to click and where to find that button. Okay, so I'm going to close this incognito window, getting back to here, getting back to the emulator and the command line. So you can see that the installation is done. The last message, RM fail for -F, blah, 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 that's normal, okay? So no worries about that one, okay? That's going to happen. The next thing you need to do is to go to the emulator and look into the tray for the program that I just installed. You can see that I got it installed here, test notifier. So that's how you run a program that is now installed by APK. So that's the same program, and you can see that it runs the same way exactly, right? Yeah, then you can close and reopen it. So, but I have it ready. Yep. So is that okay? Once you get used to it, it's not too bad. Okay, it's just that the first time there's a lot of pieces to the whole thing, but once you get used to it, it's going to be, yep, I got it. So since I'm here, yep.
As you make changes in App Inventor, is it updating that APK file?
It does not update it right away. So this is how you continue development if you use this method. Yeah, you have to keep reinstalling it. So let's say over here, let's see, what do I want to change? Okay, I changed the caption on the button, or I can just change the color. Do something really minor, right? I'll just change the font to boldface. Okay, that's what I'm changing. But in order for this change to reflect, you have to build it again. Okay, save it to the computer again, and this is where I would advise you to change your browser's behavior so it doesn't automatically save the file. It will always prompt you first. Because if it automatically saves the file, it will attach like parentheses 1, parentheses 2, and so on, which is really kind of not handy because you cannot rerun the same command. You have to modify the file name. But if you do it this way, it will suggest this name. But then I can just remove that part and go like, nope, I want to overwrite the previous file. And the nice thing about doing that is now when I go back to the command line, I just up arrow, repeat the previous command, and that's all it takes. And this is the emulator. Now the other thing that you want to kind of keep in mind is if you already have the app up and running and you reinstalled it, it will first close the application. Uh-oh, it doesn't like it. Insufficient storage. I ran out of space. That's okay. Give me another 5 minutes, please. Okay, thank you. All right. So I'm going to have to uninstall some stuff here. Okay, drag. Uh-oh, that's not it. Oh, okay, they changed the...
No, you have 2 apps.
Yeah, I got 2 apps.
Test Node.
Nope.
The other one is on Test Notifiers. It was the other app, the one on bottom left.
Yeah, I want to uninstall both. Oh, okay, I see. Gotcha. Nope, has not uninstalled it yet.
I'm not sure that uninstalls it. Can you right click it?
I can right click doesn't do a single thing. Huh?
Long press.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
On my phone, if you uninstall that way, it keeps it for 24 hours. But if you go to settings, then apps, and uninstall it there, it instantly gets it.
Oh, okay. So I can go through settings to do it. I was hoping that I could avoid that.
But that's what you have to do to update it. That's
Okay. Yeah, but yes. Yep. So you can do that to update it. So if I really want to get rid of it, I can just go to Manage Applications and uninstall. Oh, this one I don't want to uninstall. This one I want to uninstall. There we go. Okay. So let's see if I can install it this time. It's really raining. That's rain. Yep.
Okay, so you had a zip file on Canvas to download the
The-
Android emulator?
So with the emulator, there are two ways to do it. It depends on whether you want to do it on a computer where you have administrator right or on a computer where you do not have administrator right. So which one is it for you? You do have administrator. Okay. So if you have administrator right, you can use the typical one to install. So yeah, so if you have administrator right, then you go to just search for app inventor emulator Windows and go to this page, and so the linked installer would work for you. But if you are trying to get it to work on a computer where you do not have administrator right, then you have to use my hacked version where it will run in a portable way. That's the one on my shared drive. Yeah. Yeah. But that one is portable, which means you can put it onto a thumb drive and plug in the thumb drive on any computer and be able to use it. It took me a while to figure out how to do it. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, I know. Sorry? Okay. Well, let's move on to the lab. I can answer additional questions at the lab, because the next class is in the rain and they're not happy to be out there cold and wet.